The passage of the ADA was a transformative moment that officially marked the beginning of what had been a shift in our nation's attitudes and understanding of what it means to live with a disability.
I have done more in my life now than I did before I became disabled. And that's what the ADA does. It opens those doors and allows you to achieve your very best self, regardless of what that physical self is.
Fortunately for those with disabilities, there was that moment 25 years ago when it all came together.
There were organizations for each disability, Easter Seals for this, and Epilepsy Foundation for that. So there wasn't a coordinated effort.
Getting people to see the common interest was a challenge.
Chicago was, I think, one of the earlier pioneers, particularly in terms of a big city. Richard J. Daley, working with Henry Betts, who was the CEO and medical director of the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago, he understood that his patients would not be successfully returned to society unless society eliminated a lot of the barriers.
And they came upon the Berkeley Center for Independent Living and decided to model the program that they were developing after that center.
Rehab Institute Access Chicago, it evolved into Access Living.
We got organized when Access Living opened in late 79, early 80. And that was because suddenly there was a place to go, and it was run by disabled people, and it was staffed by disabled people. And people came.
When disabled people can participate fully in society, then disabled people become taxpayers, they become contributors to society.
The Centers for Independent Living, like Access Living, were developed around the idea of cross-disability. We came together and realized we had much more to gain by working together than to be separated.
When I started with Access Living in 1979, you have to remember there was no accessible transportation. And so we dramatized the whole inaccessibility problem with the buses.
When I started transporting in the city, they had to put me in an ambulance.
Those ambulances that you and 3 other disabled people in Chicago had jobs would all be picked up by at the end of the workday.
I felt like, I'm not sick, why am I in here?
The CTA was providing 400 paratransit rides a day. Now that's 200 round trips a day for possibly 60,000 people with mobility limitations with disabilities in Chicago. ADAPT was formed, the American Disabled for Accessible Public Transportation, to get literally on the bus.
We stopped in the street, we pulled out a chain, and people chained our wheelchairs together and we blocked State Street. A couple months later, we showed up for a meeting and we had noisemakers and bullhorns, and we disrupted the meeting until they would deal with us. And our demands were that they never again order another bus that is not wheelchair accessible.
Going into the lawsuit, we never even thought that we would win. But for us to get that decision, to get everything that we wanted, it was just unbelievable.
The fact that this case was successful made people realize that they had to put transportation in the ADA.
When Harold Washington ran the first time in 1983, a group of us organized the community to get people to vote for him. The idea wasn't so much to get him elected, because initially we didn't think he would get elected, but was to organize the community around electoral politics, which hadn't been done before. His appointment in 1985 of an activist with a disability to the CTA board was a momentum, a game changer.
And it really showed that disabled people can join in a movement, not only within the disability community, but outside, and that we were coalescing with others.
During the political campaign that led up to the election of Mayor Daley, the disability community pushed to have a cabinet-level position addressing the issues of people with disabilities. Shortly after being elected, Mayor Daley announced the establishment of the Mayor's Office of Persons with Disabilities, the first cabinet position to exist like that anywhere in the country.
Activists have a really critical role, people in government that understand those issues and can act on them. I think the legal community is really critical. We have to hear what the community thinks in order to put those things on our agenda to address.
We gave real-life experience from what we learned here in Chicago to share with others in Washington so that they can write policy that was effective for our people.
While this act is being argued on Capitol Hill, the city of Chicago is scheduled to unveil a massive plan for the disabled this month. The mayor is expected to announce a project which would make the Loop area fully accessible to the disabled.
Maggie Daley worked very closely with her dear friend Shirley Ryan in advancing the mayor's goal of making Chicago the most accessible city in the nation. There were many incredible organizations here in Chicago that were working together towards the passage of the ADA.
And the groundwork that had been done by the independent living centers and by the work that Justin Dart did going back out into the communities for a third time to travel around the country and generate support culminated in that coming to Washington and saying, we're going to be heard.
There was a time in this country when I was segregated on public transportation. I was required to ride in the back of the bus. I didn't like it then, and I don't like to see any other Americans being segregated like that today.
And they would send it out to us quickly, and we had to turn around a response, in like 48 hours.
People like Pat Wright and others have been working hour by hour, literally 18 to 20-hour days to make sure that this bill passes.
I remember just being so excited seeing that this was about to happen.
I was stunned when it passed.
The ADA was so detailed and so comprehensive. It really helped change, I think, our consciousness as a society.
President Bush uncaps a pen on the desk. Holding it in his left hand, he signs a paper. The president signs again with another pen and gives it to Evan Kemp.
Laws are only as good as their enforcement mechanisms. And President Clinton appointed strong assistant attorney generals and attorney generals to lead the development of the regulations and the implementation for the ADA. They brought important case law forward. They set the bar that created the foundation for all the change that we've seen since.
I think it's important to ground young people in identifying with the disability community because they can bring innovative ideas such as the ADA.
So by just starting to talk about laws and things like that that are helping people with disabilities, then that gets people interested into other things of why they should be advocating.
I see myself not just as a deaf or hard of hearing advocate, but as a disability advocate who's continuing the work that people did to pass the ADA.
There's no reason why we as creative people can't come up with a million great ways to support people in the community and to do that in a way that adds to everyone's well-being and safety and joy in everyday life.
It is important that at the time of this anniversary that we not make the mistake of declaring victory, but there is still much work to do.